When I first met Michael, it wasn't the way people usually tell those stories. There were no fireworks. No soft music. No slow-motion glances across a crowded room. There was just a coffee shop. Rain on the window. And the smell of cinnamon scones. I was sitting in the far corner, bundled in a grey scarf, working on a stubborn paragraph of a short story I hated. I remember the way I tapped the backspace key too hard, like maybe violence would fix bad writing. It didn't. And then he asked if he could sit down. That was it. That simple. I know the place is practically empty, he said, motioning to the rest of the room, but your corner has better lighting. I liked that. A strange thing to notice. I remember raising an eyebrow, amused, and sliding my laptop an inch to the left, like I was making room for something unexpected. He sat down across from me. Black coat. Messy brown hair. Smile that didn't ask permission. The kind of face that looked like it had stories to tell. And the eyes, blue, clear, too honest for a stranger. Michael, he said, offering a hand. Lena. We shook hands like we weren't going to fall in love. But we did. God, we did. It didn't take long. 2 weeks after that, he was showing up with coffee for both of us. 3 weeks later, I knew the names of his 2 older sisters, his favorite childhood movie, The Iron Giant, and the way his voice cracked a little when he was tired. He talked with his hands. He always wore mismatched socks. He kissed my forehead when he thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I was memorizing him. By the 3rd month, we were spending weekends out by the lake. He brought a battered Polaroid and took photos of everything, ducks, shadows, me pretending not to notice him taking pictures of me. He said it was how he remembered life best, in still frames. He was a music teacher, at a local middle school, played guitar like it was a language only he understood. I asked him once why he didn't try to be famous. I'd rather matter deeply to a few, he said, than shallowly to millions. That was Michael. We moved in together after 6 months. A small apartment above a bakery. The walls were thin and the heater clicked like it was haunted, but it was ours. We painted the bedroom a shade of green that never looked right, and laughed every time we walked into it. At night, we danced in the kitchen to old vinyls we found at yard sales. Sometimes we didn't even bother with music. He'd take my hand in silence and spin me slowly, the refrigerator buzzing in the background, our shadows stretching across the tile. I feel like I dreamed you, he said one night, brushing my hair behind my ear. And you're going to vanish when I wake up. You don't get rid of me that easily, I teased. I didn't know how wrong I was. The world around us became quieter when we were together. Like we carried our own kind of gravity. He made time stretch, slow, breathe. There was a morning, I think about it often, when we lay on the floor, side by side, staring at the ceiling like it held the meaning of life. The sun came through the blinds in soft stripes, and he reached over, fingers lightly tracing the inside of my wrist. What are you thinking? He asked. That if this is it, I whispered, if this moment is all we ever have. I'd still call it enough. He didn't answer with words. Just pulled my hand to his lips and closed his eyes. I think that was the moment I realized how fragile everything was. How quickly it could all change. But we didn't know that yet. We were just Lena and Michael. 2 people in love. Messy. Real. Honest. And so incredibly alive. We believed love was enough. We believed we had time. It started with small things. A forgotten word. A missed exit. A strange look in her eyes like she was searching for something invisible, some string of memory she couldn't quite hold on to. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Nobody worries when the love of their life forgets where she put her keys. It's just life. Stress. A busy week. We all get tired. But then she forgot her own birthday. I had planned this quiet little celebration at home, just the two of us. Her favorite dessert. A candle in the middle. A letter I wrote her by hand. She walked through the door, bags in hand, kissed me, and asked what the occasion was. I thought she was joking. I laughed. She didn't. From that moment on, something inside me split. I watched her more closely. Not like a lover. Like a guard. She started sleeping more. Writing less. There were moments when her sentences drifted into silence, her gaze going somewhere I couldn't follow. Are you okay? I'd ask her softly. She always smiled too quickly. Just tired. But it wasn't just tired. And it wasn't going away. We sat in a doctor's office 3 weeks later, holding hands too tightly. The walls were beige. The chairs were cold. The fluorescent lights made everything look paler. I remember the doctor's voice, calm, clinical, distant. Early onset neurodegenerative disorder. The words didn't make sense. They felt too big. Too wrong. She was only 29. When we got home that night, she didn't cry. She curled up on the couch and leaned her head on my shoulder like she always did. And I just held her. 4 hours. I held her like maybe if I pressed her close enough, I could keep her here. I could stop the unraveling. But something in her was already slipping through my fingers. The days became measured in what she remembered. One day, she forgot the name of her favorite book. Then the chords to her favorite song. Then the name of her father. But she always remembered me. That was the strange, aching mercy of it. Even as her world dimmed, she would look at me and say, "Michael," like it was the only word she could still feel with her whole body. And I clung to that. Like a lifeline. I started keeping a notebook, writing down everything she said, every memory she shared. I filmed her laughing. I recorded her voice telling stories about her childhood. I archived her existence like it might disappear from the world without warning. She began to write sticky notes to herself. Tea is in the blue jar. Brush teeth before bed. Don't forget you love him. I found that last one stuck to the mirror one morning. It shattered me. Then, one night, I woke up and the bed was empty. I ran through the apartment calling her name. My chest tight. My hands shaking. I found her in the hallway, barefoot, staring at the wall. "Lena," I whispered, "what are you doing?" She turned to me slowly. Her eyes wide. "Lost? I don't know where I am." My heart broke in a way I didn't know hearts could break. Not from pain, but from helplessness. I walked to her carefully, like she might disappear if I moved too fast. "You're home," I said, placing my hands gently on her face. "You're safe." "I'm here." "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I told her. From that night forward, I started sleeping less. Watching her more. I didn't tell her, but I started counting how many moments of clarity she had each day. Like they were hours in a sand glass I couldn't flip. I prayed for time. I begged in silence. But time doesn't listen. And clarity fades. The turning point came on a Tuesday. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She was smiling at something I said, something about the neighbor's ugly lawn gnome, and then suddenly, she looked at me like I was a stranger. A full, empty stare. "Who are you?" she asked. She blinked, confused, polite. I couldn't breathe. My mouth opened but no sound came out. My name. I needed her to remember my name. Then, just as quickly, she flinched and shook her head. Oh God, she gasped, grabbing my hands. Michael. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening to me. She started crying, and I held her while my own tears fell silently behind her back. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just losing her memories. I was losing her. But I wasn't going to let go. Even if she forgot everything, our story, our love, my name, I wouldn't forget her. Even if I had to carry her through the darkness. Even if I had to remind her who she was every single day. Even if I had to fall apart in the process. I'd stay. There's a kind of silence that isn't quiet. It's the sound of your own mind unraveling. The kind that fills a room after she asks your name for the third time in a day. The kind that follows you into the shower, into the car, into bed. Heavy. Constant. Sharp. That's where I lived now. In that silence. I stopped recognizing the man in the mirror. I'd lost weight. I barely slept. My eyes always looked like they were apologizing for something I couldn't fix. The world outside kept moving, people laughed at cafes, traffic lights changed, the seasons turned. But inside that apartment, time stopped and grief lingered like dust in the air. She still smiled sometimes. Still kissed my cheek. Still curled into my chest at night like she always had. But more and more, her eyes were vacant. Flickering. Like a candle in a room with too much wind. I kept pretending. That was the worst part. Smiling when I had to. Making jokes I didn't feel. Keeping her calm when her mind would panic mid-sentence, like her thoughts had slipped off a cliff she hadn't seen coming. It's okay, baby, I'd whisper, brushing her hair back. You're safe. I'm here. Every time she forgot a name, a place, a part of her story. I learned to hold the sadness until she looked away. I didn't want her to carry my grief, too. There was a day, I'll never forget it, when she tried to make pancakes. I came home from picking up her medication and found smoke pouring out of the kitchen. Batter all over the counter. Burned pans. She stood in the middle of it, sobbing. Confused. Ashamed. I wanted to surprise you, she choked. Like before. And then she collapsed in my arms. That was the day I stopped pretending we were okay. I started turning into something else. A caregiver. A nurse. A guardian. Not a boyfriend. Not the man who used to dance with her barefoot in the kitchen. There were whole days where she didn't recognize me. And on those days, I didn't recognize myself either. I stopped going out. Stopped seeing friends. My world became her medications, her schedule, her doctor visits, her unpredictable, heartbreaking episodes. I tracked every change in her behavior like a scientist chasing a cure that didn't exist. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I stood in the bathroom, staring into the mirror, the toothbrush in my hand shaking. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. I looked at myself. Hollowed out. Haunted. I don't know who I am without her knowing me. But I didn't give up. Something in me refused. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the memory of her laughing with her head thrown back in that stupid green-painted bedroom. I started reading everything I could find, case studies, clinical trials, patient journals. I filled a binder with notes, hoping, somehow, there was something, anything, that might help. Her doctor told me not to cling to hope. That I should prepare. But hope wasn't something I clung to. It was something I became. I built rituals for her. Flashcards with faces and names. Photo albums with labels. I'd wake her gently every morning and tell her a story about us. Where we met. Our first kiss. The first time she said she loved me. Sometimes she remembered. Most times she didn't. But when she did, it lit her up from the inside like a window catching morning light. Those moments kept me breathing. Still, I was fading. I didn't laugh the way I used to. I forgot the sound of my own guitar. I forgot who I was without her eyes to reflect me back. But there was no room for my breakdown. Only for hers. I had become a shadow of myself. And yet, I stayed. Because if love meant anything, it meant standing in the dark when someone else's light goes out. There was a shift. Not in her, but in me. It started the night she had a seizure. Out of nowhere. One moment we were sitting on the couch watching an old episode of Friends. She laughed at Joey, which gave me a flicker of hope, and then the next, she went rigid. Her body jerked. Her eyes rolled back. And I froze. Completely. Uselessly. For maybe 2 seconds. Then everything snapped into motion. I held her. Called 911. Felt my heartbeat in my throat the entire time. At the hospital, under the white ceiling lights, I watched machines breathe for her. I thought she was going to die right there in front of me. But she didn't. She came back. And when she woke up, she said, in a fragile, broken whisper, "Something's wrong, Michael. It's not just my brain." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a chair by her hospital bed, watching the steady green rhythm of her heart on a monitor, thinking about everything we'd been told. The diagnosis. The hopeless tone in the doctor's voice. The steady decline. But something didn't add up. Her memory loss had been erratic. The symptoms inconsistent. Then the seizures. The insomnia. Mood swings. Balance issues. None of it followed a clean textbook pattern. I went back to the beginning. Old lab results. MRI scans. Doctor's notes. She had signed release forms months ago, and I still had copies in my hope binder. And that's when I saw it. A discrepancy. 2 scans taken weeks apart, by 2 different labs. One showed minor tissue degradation. The other showed nothing. No signs of atrophy. No fluid shifts. Nothing consistent with neurodegeneration. I almost dropped the papers. I started digging. Calling labs. Visiting hospitals. Pushing past polite refusals. At one point, I even faked being her husband, just to get someone to talk to me. Finally, I found something. One of the earlier tests, a blood panel, had been processed through a private contractor. Not a hospital lab. And the name on the paperwork was circled in blue ink. Dr. Thomas Redmond. I remembered him. He'd seen her only once, early in the process. The visit felt rushed, forgettable. But now it stood out. Why was he connected to the initial diagnosis? And why was he working for a pharmaceutical company on the side? I drove 2 hours to his private clinic. I didn't make an appointment. I just showed up. He was cold, clinical, impatient. "I'm sorry," he said, not looking me in the eye. "Medical records are confidential. If your partner is declining, I suggest palliative care." My fists clenched. She's 29. She's healthy. Or she was. And now she's disappearing while you sit here in your glass office with your perfect answers. He exhaled slowly. "This isn't how the system works." "No," I said, stepping forward, "it's how you work." The truth came in pieces. I found a whistleblower article buried online. A lawsuit that had been sealed. A paper trail of off-the-books research involving neurological drug trials. Unethical ones. My stomach dropped when I read the name of the drug, Z83. She had taken part in a clinical trial, a short one, years ago, for migraines. It was listed under a different compound number. Hidden. She had forgotten it completely. And no one ever followed up. I brought it all to her neurologist. He stared at the printed papers like I'd handed him a live grenade. And then he said 4 words I'll never forget. This changes everything. The next few weeks were chaos. Meetings. Testimonies. Medical reviews. Threats of litigation. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was that Lena's condition wasn't some tragic, natural decline. It was the result of something done to her. A drug. A lie. A system that failed her. I wasn't just watching her fade. I had been letting it happen, because I trusted people in coats and clipboards instead of my gut. But now I was done trusting. I found lawyers. Told our story to a journalist. I chased every name connected to the trial. And when the company tried to bury the case, I made it louder. I didn't care how far I had to go. If there was a chance, any chance, to stop the damage, or slow it, or even just bring those responsible into the light, I would take it. Because love, when it's real, doesn't just grieve. It fights. And finally, a breakthrough. A new specialist. An independent trial. Experimental detoxification protocols, treatments for synthetic neurotoxicity. Risky. Unproven. But her new MRI showed signs of chemical disruption, not irreversible brain decay. There was still hope. Maybe not a cure. But a chance. When I told her, she looked at me like a fog had briefly cleared. "You never gave up on me," she whispered. I took her face in my hands. Not for 1 second. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I don't remember everything," she said, her voice shaking, "but I feel it. I feel how much you love me. Even in the dark." And that was enough. That was everything. I used to think love was soft. Something tender. Gentle. Something like warm coffee and quiet mornings and the comfort of someone's breath beside you in the dark. But I was wrong. Real love, the kind that survives war, is not soft. It scars you. It rebuilds you. Changes your shape. Makes you someone else entirely. After the truth came out, everything in my world rearranged. The pharmaceutical company, Celeris Biogen, began burying documents and denying connections. Their PR machine moved faster than I could scream. Lena's story was just one of many, but it was the one I carried like a sword. I wasn't just her partner anymore. I became her advocate. Her defender. Her voice. We started the experimental treatment on a Thursday morning. The hospital was smaller than I expected. Sterile. Unassuming. She sat in the recliner with an 4 in her arm, eyes half-lidded, her body trembling with exhaustion. I stayed beside her, every second. The treatment was hard. Her body convulsed from detox side effects. There were days she forgot how to speak. Nights she screamed in her sleep, and I held her through the shaking like I could absorb the pain if I pressed close enough. I stopped being Michael, the man with the guitar, the man with soft hands and softer eyes. I became Michael, the fighter. The one who didn't sleep. The one who made noise in rooms filled with silence. The one who learned how to speak the language of doctors, researchers, attorneys. I stopped shaving. Stopped smiling. I didn't have time for charm. I had time for war. And slowly, something changed. Not just in her, but in me. There were days she came back. Not entirely. But enough. She'd look at me with her old eyes and say, "You're still here." Every time, I'd laugh through tears. Always. And she'd whisper, don't ever stop being you. But the truth was, I wasn't me anymore. One night, after she fell asleep, I looked at myself in the mirror. My jawline was sharper. My eyes colder. My posture different, like a man always ready to fight or flee. I didn't recognize the reflection. But I respected him. Because he had endured. He had crawled through hell and kept someone else alive in the process. Lena was changing too. Her speech began to return in fragments. Memories surfaced like bubbles in water, brief, brilliant, and gone again. But each one meant something. Each one gave me hope. One morning, she turned to me, reached out, and said, "Michael, I remember the lake." I blinked. What? Your camera? The ducks? That photo you took of me with my hair all? She waved her hands, smiling, windblown and crazy. I almost collapsed. Because I had that photo in my wallet. Folded. Faded. And she hadn't seen it in over a year. She was coming back. But it wasn't all victory. We lost people. Friends faded away, they didn't know how to stand in the wreckage with us. Family tried, but they couldn't carry the weight. I didn't blame them. This kind of love, it costs. I paid in sleep. In years. In innocence. I paid by sacrificing the man I used to be. There was a night near the end of the treatment when she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't want to be broken anymore." I held her face. Kissed her forehead. "You're not broken. You're becoming." And maybe, so was I. I knew I'd never go back to who I was. That version of me, the easy smile, the boy who played guitar in the kitchen, that man was gone. But I wasn't mourning him anymore. Because what replaced him was someone stronger. Someone sharper. Someone willing to burn down the world for the woman he loved. Lena was still fragile. The damage couldn't all be undone. The treatment helped, but it wasn't magic. There would be relapses. Gaps. Shadows. But she was here. Still her. And I was someone else. But that was okay. Because love, when it's real, doesn't keep you the same. It remakes you. Time didn't fix her. I used to think it might. That if we just held on long enough, through the treatment, through the silence, through the storms, things would return to how they used to be. But they didn't. And they won't. And that's okay. Because we're still here. She has good days now. Sometimes she wakes up early, humming a song she half remembers. She makes coffee with 2 sugars instead of 3. She kisses me like she never forgot how. And other days, well. Other days are hard. She'll look at me across the room with distant eyes, unsure, like I'm familiar but unreachable. Like I'm someone she once loved in another life. Sometimes she stares at her own hands like they don't belong to her. It hurts. God, it hurts. But I no longer measure love by how easy it is. I measure it by how much of yourself you're willing to give when everything feels broken. I keep a journal now. Not for me. For her. Every night, I write down something we did that day. Something small, a laugh we shared, a color she said she liked, a sentence she finished. A flicker of who she is. When she forgets, I read it to her. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes she smiles. Sometimes she just listens quietly, resting her head on my chest like it's the only place she still feels safe. And in those moments, I feel it all at once. The grief. The gratitude. The ache of holding onto someone who's always halfway slipping away, and the miracle that she's still here to hold. People ask why I stayed. Why I didn't leave when things got too heavy. Too ugly. Too lonely. But they don't understand. Lena is not a burden. She's a universe. Even fractured. Even fading. Even fighting battles inside her mind that no one else can see, she is still the person I fell in love with. Because love doesn't exist outside of pain. It includes it. And the deeper the love, the deeper the ache. I used to think our story would have a clean, happy ending. A wedding. A sunset. A montage of smiles fading to black. But now I know better. The real ending is every single day we wake up still choosing each other. Love doesn't always look like it does in movies. Sometimes, it looks like holding someone's hand through a panic attack. Or reminding them who they are, over and over again. Or brushing their hair when they are too tired to lift their arms. Or whispering, "I love you," to a face that may not remember your name. We don't dance in the kitchen much anymore. But sometimes, just sometimes, she'll hear a song she remembers. And she'll reach for me. And we'll sway slowly, her cheek pressed to my shoulder, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. And in those moments, we are infinite again. Not perfect. Not healed. But real. There's a kind of love that stays even when memory doesn't. A love that endures through every forgetting, every tremor, every fragile morning when the world feels unfamiliar. That's the kind of love I've found. And that's the kind I'll give her. Every single day. Because in the end, love and pain are one. And both are worth everything.